Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Fan Finder podcast. I'm your host, Megan Kuhar. I think you're going to find today's episode very, very timely because I don't know about you, but working from home every day has kind of killed my regular routine. I mean, that's an understatement. I find myself struggling to jump into meaningful work, and by the end of the day, I feel frazzled and like I don't even know what I accomplished that day. Not to mention the level of stress and worry, right? That's why I'm so happy to bring on my guest today, Cristina Roman. Cristina is a life coach from Pique Coaching who specializes in deep work and productivity. If you've never heard of the term deep work, think focused, uninterrupted work. It's about blocking out about 60 minutes of time to have one task completed, whether it's writing a song or going through your inbox. Her method of getting into a deep work state in 15 minutes is super simple, easy to adopt, and really energizing too. So before we get into that conversation, I just want to reach out again and offer you my support and my services in a way that I hope helps you through these weird, distressing times. You know, as Cristina mentions on the show, having a coach can really help you to see new perspective, to learn new skills, and to grow in ways that you can't imagine. And I know that right now, as a musician, as an artist, that's something that's really tough to understand and see, but it's something that might really help you get through these next few months. So I hope to help you in some way. I have a lot of different opportunities, courses, Patreon, one-on-one coaching, ebooks. So just head to megan-kuhar.com/services and let's figure out how we can work together. I'm so excited for y'all to hear this episode, so let's get into it. You're listening to the Fan Finder podcast. I'm your host, Megan Kuhar, and I help musicians stop panic posting and start creating killer content online. This show is all about branding, marketing, entrepreneurship, and social media, teaching you how to organically build your audience and find your fans so you can grow your career and start inspiring more people with your music. Let's do this. Hi, Cristina. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So can we start by just having you share a little bit of your background and who you are and how you came to be where you're at now?
Absolutely. I always say it's been a winding road, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I have a background running businesses. I've been doing that ever since college and after. And I started my life coaching business a year ago. So I became a certified life coach in September of 2019. And now I am a full-time life coach working specifically with my clients on all things productivity. So that means a lot of ending procrastination, a lot of increasing focus, and a lot of eliminating distractions that they're experiencing in their lives.
I think it's perfect to talk about that right now because as the world is kind of gearing towards this working from home, everybody's not used to it. We're all kind of remotely working in these little offices that we have, you know, half of us set these up because we figured we needed an office, but hardly ever use it. And now we're having to find ourselves sitting in these rooms, like actually getting real work done. And it's really tough because, you know, I don't know, for me, like I feel like I'm wasting hours just kind of piddling around trying to figure out how to get started. And because the other thing that's been happening is like my day is not a long day anymore. It's broken up into chunks. And because I have childcare, I have to, like, my husband and I are trading off and everything. So it's just kind of like I got to get things done quickly. And I know that that's one of your areas of expertise. And so I'm really excited to have you on and talk to you about that. Let's talk a little bit about kind of like working as a life coach and how you like onboard your clients and like work with them a little bit and get them to a point where they are seeing these like changes in their lives.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it's funny you ask this because I do morning pages every single morning. So it's 3 pages of unscripted writing. Are you a fan?
I'm familiar with that through a book called The Artist's Way. I don't know if you know that book. Yeah. So maybe some of our listeners know that as well. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine that there's got to be at least somebody listening who either has heard of it or already does morning pages. I found it to be just an amazing way to start my day. I always say life is not one size fits all. Business is not one size fits all. music is not one size fits all. So for me, waking up, having my coffee and doing 3 pages of writing every morning is the best way to start. It makes me go into my day so clear and energized, but I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. I know a lot of people who resist writing, so I'm not prescriptive. So I guess that's one way that I start working with my clients is I have plenty of strategies and methods, but I try not to be prescriptive about assigning really inflexible things to my clients, right? It's all about creating structure, but having a lot of flexibility within that structure. The morning pages point was that this morning I was writing a post about how to be coached. So I write so much content about how to coach and how to use the strategies that I use with my clients in your everyday life. But I thought it would be really helpful to actually write a post that helps people prepare to be coached. So that was really interesting, and that's top of mind for me right now. And some of my points there were, your job as someone ready to be coached is to show up ready to be open and honest and vulnerable and relax, because I got you. I'm going to ask the right question to get us to the answer that we need to know. So I know that a lot of my clients show up and they're like, I don't know how many details of my story you need to know. And I always say, I can sift through all the details and I'll ask the right follow-up question to get us the information that we need to really get to the heart of the matter. So I think that starts to answer your question at least.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think it's a good thing to talk about. So like, how do you know that you're ready for a coach? How do you know that you're ready to step into that world?
Yeah, such a good question. So I always say that you're ready when you are ready for someone to present a different perspective. If you are so wedded to all of your thoughts and your beliefs that you're not willing for someone to get in your mind and really dig deep, then you're probably not ready for coaching. That being said, I do have clients that come to me and there's certain areas of their lives where they're like, I want to be ready. And we can definitely get traction and we can get wiggle room, I always call it. So being willing to basically have your brain exposed to your coach, because that's what we're fundamentally doing, is showing you what's happening in your mind. So that's a really powerful way to know that you are ready for coaching. And the other thing that's really interesting is I've noticed a correlation between sense of humor and coachability. So people who take themselves so seriously are often really hard to coach because they're always doubling down on their negative beliefs. And they're not willing to just see that they're being totally human and to laugh at that. So that's a really interesting connection that I've started to piece together.
I think that's so true too. Like just in general, being open to changes and fluctuations and everything, like you just have to be able to laugh at it. So, and we should all just collectively take a moment to think that way and all laugh a little bit because everything's crazy right now. So it's just like, yeah, I don't know. We all need to be open to coaching right now at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think first of all, I was going to say, one of my best friends is living with me for all intents and purposes during this quarantine social distancing time. And so we're decided to just post on Instagram with like we call them #quarantine quotes. And we're like trying to just see the humor in things without being obviously distasteful and while still taking things very seriously. We're being very serious about the social distancing, but we also want to have a little bit of fun and poke some fun at ourselves along the way. But yeah, I think, taking a minute to laugh and to just recognize that your brain has been set up for hundreds of years to protect you and that it's doing a stellar job, and to just see everything that's happening in your life as potential sources of humor can be so helpful.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a good point too. So I'm so excited to chat with you more about productivity and all of your areas of expertise and getting into I like that you call it deep work, because it's like it's almost like it's this it's a term for being able to work really meaningfully, even if you don't have a lot of time. If I'm interpreting that correctly. And I would love to know more about this. So you have a step-by-step process. Can you share the first step for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to give credit to Cal Newport, who actually is the author of the book Deep Work. And that's where the term deep work comes from.
Oh, cool. I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the way that he talks about deep work is this focused, uninterrupted work that increases your capacity and it increases your skill set. So it's not generally the emails that you're just shooting off, you're kind of multitasking, you're distracted. It's when you carve out that time to sit down and really stretch your brain. It's where the best ideas tend to come from. And there's some overlap between deep work and then flow, where that stuff just kind of starts pouring out of you. So that's really fun to see my clients report in on.
So like, say if you want to spend this quarantine time, like writing a book, like how do you do that? How do you get that to work? Yeah. Okay, cool. Hit me. I'm ready.
Okay. Perfect. So step one is super easy. You print out my worksheet.
Cool.
That's it.
Where can we find it?
Yes. piquecoaching.co/deep-work-state.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yep.
So basically I'll take a step back. So that is the first step is you print out this worksheet and it's going to walk you through step by step how to get into a deep work state in 15 minutes. And the analogy that I use for this process is when you are landing an airplane, you probably don't want to do a crash landing. You want to glide down into a nice little gentle landing. I'm scared of flying, so this is particularly relevant for me. And that's what I like to say with my process for getting into a deep work state is you can try to crash land your way into a focused block of time. But often what happens is you end up getting derailed somewhere along the way with that because you haven't anticipated all the obstacles that are going to come up and you haven't actually fully prepared. So I don't know if you have any examples with yourself, but like, let's say you carve out 60 minutes and you're going to do a focus block of time. And halfway through, you're like, I need to go to the bathroom, or I need a glass of water, or I need a new cup of coffee. And then somehow you end up in a different room being like, wait, what was I doing originally? Does that ever happen to you?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. You're human. Congrats.
I mean, it happens to me not even by leaving the room, but even by like changing the tab on my browser. Like, I need to look up that word. And then I look it up and then I'm like, oh, wait, what? And then I'm off. I'm done.
Yeah.
Like,
it's wild. Yeah. So this guide is basically walking you through all of that and to anticipate those obstacles. So minute one is to print out that worksheet. And then from there, you're going to take 1 minute and define deep work for yourself. So it can vary based on the day and based on the task. But for me, it usually looks like turning my phone on airplane mode, but I keep my Wi-Fi on because most of my stuff requires Wi-Fi. And then do not look at my phone for 60 minutes. For other people, like you use the example of writing a book, you might say, I'm turning my phone off and I'm turning off Wi-Fi, but I still get to use my computer to type. So I'm curious, actually, sometimes it's really helpful to use a specific example. So is it helpful to pull an example from your life, like a project that you're working on or something that you think your listeners might be working on?
Yeah, sure. Well, what about like writing an album or writing a song? So, like if somebody is trying to, a lot of times people do like challenges where they'll try like one song each day, right? Like there was my client did like February, it's called FOM, and it's February album writing month. And you're supposed to write like 14 songs for the month of February. So one every other day. So that's one of those things where you're like forcing yourself to complete a song every other day. You have to complete it. So you're working on it all the time. So I think that's a good example.
That's great. That with our method, you for sure will be focused. I promise you that. So let's say that you decide, so you print out the worksheet minute one, and then you define deep work for yourself. I would imagine that people would want to do that on the computer, but
it depends on what they do. Yeah. Like what instrument or computer. But yeah, if let's say they are on the computer, because that's an easy place to get distracted.
Perfect. So phone on airplane mode, and then maybe turn your Wi-Fi off on your computer and just pull up your notes, whatever you want to define deep work as for yourself. And then from there, you're going to decide how long your block is. I usually recommend that you start with 60 minutes. That's an easy one. And then from there, you choose the task that fits into your definition of deep work. In our case, we already did it. But if you're bringing on a new project, you say in an hour, at the end of 60 minutes, what is a result that I can create? So you might say at the end of 60 minutes, I'm going to do an entire song, no matter what. From there, do you want me to keep going through the list?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, actually, quick question.
Yeah.
So when you do this though, like my brain is like, well, do you get to edit it later? Like, like, so when you go through that 60 minutes,
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's just going to be like your first run at it, right? So like, even if you decide by the end of it, I do have a completed song, but I need to make changes to it, you still have succeeded in that goal.
I think that's a really good question. And I would bounce that back to the individual and the way that they work best. So for me, let's say I write a lot of blog posts, and I used to talk to my business partner about this because she will painstakingly write every single sentence. And I run through the entire thing. And then I'm like, okay, quick edit. So I think it's totally personal. So whatever result you want to achieve by the end of 60 minutes, decide that ahead of time. And then the key, which most people don't do, is to stick to that. So if you say, I want a completed song, but unedited by the end of 60 minutes, make sure that you achieve that. Or if you say, listen, I'm feeling ambitious, I can write an entire song and I can edit it in 60 minutes, make that your result.
Right. Yeah.
But don't let yours. Yeah.
You can make your result like a draft of a completed song, like verse, chorus. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
But what I see a lot of people do is they're like, well, I don't know how long it's going to take. But with this method, you are deciding ahead of time how long it's going to take and then doing that.
Yeah, because you have to make a promise to yourself and then fulfill that promise.
Exactly. Which is not, honestly, when I think back to myself, I'm like, I very rarely used to do that. And so this has been a game changer for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you find that when people, maybe I'm jumping a little bit forward or something, but when people decide to do this, does it mean that they have to choose like only a certain number of priorities a day and really be clear about what their day's priorities are? Because I'm imagining like for me, so this would be really great if it was like, okay, I'm going to write an email to my list every day or every other day or something. And so that, let's say it's every day. So 5 days this week, I'm going to write an email and I'm going to give myself 60 minutes to get it all set up. And so that takes an hour out of each day for the whole week. Does that mean like, obviously that limits of what else I can accomplish that day. So do you recommend like chunking up your day in those hours so that you like, so let's say you have an 8-hour day, well, you have 1 hour for lunch. So that means you can get 7 things done that day? Or how does that normally, like, maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're asking really good questions. I love hearing these. You're not presenting objections per se, but I love hearing the different thought process because this helps me refine the process. So what I like to say is prioritization comes before deep work. And prioritization can be part of deep work as well. So if you have no idea what your priorities in your life and in your music career are, you should use a deep work block to set your priorities.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So like I have a worksheet if anyone's interested. I can send it your way as well, but it's figuring out your top 5 priorities in your life. And then you use the worksheet again to really narrow in. So you say, okay, now that I know that my music career is number 2, what within my music career is going to get me my biggest bang for my buck?
Yeah.
And so I always say, prioritize first. And then it becomes so crystal clear what you should be spending your deep work blocks on. So when I did this exercise, when I really zoomed out in my business and I realized that pitching to be on podcasts was obviously going to get me the best result, then I knew that of course I was going to spend an hour per day pitching. Why would I not do that when I now am so clear that that's going to get me incredible results? And so I think this is also part of your question is your deep work block could be writing 1 email, but it could also be I'm going to do a deep work block in my inbox. So for an hour straight, uninterrupted, completely focused, I'm going to run through my entire inbox. So that's a lot of little tasks, but it's the same type of task.
That makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I like that.
Did that answer all? I think that answered all the different pieces.
Yeah, I think so. What you're talking about too with like understanding your priorities and understanding like, you said like your top priorities of life, top 5 priorities, that it's funny because this process is the same process I use for mapping out social media content. Like you need to have like the pillars of your message and like the pillars of what you're trying to, like your big picture purpose and priorities and things. And then as you kind of narrow those down, the posts just keep coming and you can plan like, 50 posts at once. And it's just like, it's easy because you have all that structure figured out. So this makes total sense to me. I'm completely on board.
I love it. Well, and that's a perfect example, right? Is sit down and use your 60 minutes to write 50 social media posts at once.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I was also going to suggest with prioritization, the other thing that's really helpful is if you set up a specific result that you want to create. So for example, if you want to create 14 songs in the month of February, or if you want to write an entire album, go first to the result that you want and then plan backwards. And so from there you say, okay, what is every single action that I will need to take in order to get this result of 14 songs written? And then you make an exhaustive list of everything that needs to happen. And then from there you say, what are all of the obstacles standing in the way between me and actually checking this item off my to-do list? Mm-hmm. And then you develop a strategy for overcoming all of those obstacles. So for example, someone might say, for the social media post, they might say, I don't have enough research articles that on file to refer to. I don't know.
Right.
And so then that's your obstacle. Well, what is your strategy? I'm going to put 60 minutes of deep work on my calendar to just do research to gather links to then use in my social media posts, right? So you're breaking it down further and further into all of the steps that you can actually take action on.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Awesome.
Love it.
Cool.
All right, what's next?
From there, you're going to pick an empowering thought. And I always say, fill in the blank. I am committed to deep work because blank. Does anything jump into your head right away?
Because I deserve to spend my time in the most valuable way I can.
I love it. That's amazing. So try this on real quick. When you think that thought, I'm committed to deep work because I deserve to spend my time in the most valuable way possible, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like my life is like going to, like at the end, you'll look back and be like, I did what I could. Every moment that I could, I did what I could. And That's really awesome. It makes me feel really good.
Yeah. Excellent. So if you think back to the life coaching model I was just talking about off mic, all of your thoughts are creating your feelings and your feelings are creating your actions. And so if you think about sitting down to do 60 minutes of deep work as an action, that has to be fueled by a feeling, and likely a feeling like apathy or disappointment or shame is not going to fuel sitting there and actually accomplishing this. So what you're trying to do essentially is to input into your brain a really empowering thought that creates a really empowering feeling that's then going to drive you through your 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. I don't know how like woo-woo your listeners are, but it's really funny because this I think sounds woo-woo, but it's actually insanely practical. But
yeah, no, I was literally the same client that I was just talking about. Her name is Gail. Shout out if she's listening. She and I were like, I subscribe to a respectable amount of woo. So
perfect.
Bring on the woo. Yeah, I'll take a little.
Yeah. And it's once you start digging into this idea that thoughts create feelings, which create actions, you're like,
I totally believe
so
that.
Logical. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is pick an empowering thought. And then from there, I gave a little teaser of this one, but you're going to brainstorm all of the obstacles and then the strategies for overcoming them that it might crop up in the next 60 minutes. So I have a list of obstacles that come up a lot with my clients, but I would actually love to toss the question back to you if you're comfortable. When you sit down to do 60 minutes, what are the things that are most likely to derail you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess it depends on what I'm working on, but probably for the most part, it's thoughts that are like, no one's going to like this, or I'm not going to finish it, or like maybe this isn't the right way, or like I haven't found the perfect solution yet, that kind of thing. Like I'm very much a perfectionist, and also like I feel like when I create stuff, I tend to waste a lot of time making it perfect, and that definitely will slow me down because it's like a cycle. It's like I'm taking all this time trying to make it perfect, and then when it gets to the time where I feel like it's perfect, then I start worrying that other people aren't going to like it. So that's the cycle, the obstacle cycle that I go through.
Yeah, I love how aware you are of all of that. And yeah, insecurity comes up so much when people sit down to do really intensive work, especially creative work, that feeling of insecurity, or things that come up for my clients. They feel bored. They feel restless.
Yeah.
They want to pay attention to the news, especially right now.
Yeah.
So once you brainstorm all of those things, and it can even be something as simple as I'm going to want a glass of water, I'm going to want a cup of coffee, and really write down an exhaustive list in the time allocated of all the things that you think might derail you, then come up with a strategy. So for you, just starting by saying, oh, that's so interesting. Almost certainly in the next hour, I'm going to think the thought, no one's going to want this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But just knowing that that thought exists, a lot of people will try to resist that or push it away or pretend it's not there. But what we're doing is we're just surfacing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just letting it be there and working anyway.
Yeah. You're just working despite having that thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not resisting it.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just talking, a client just emailed me and he said he's working on a screenplay. And he said that he sat down to do deep work today and he had all these thoughts, but he just was the watcher, which is a term I introduce in the guide. But it's this idea of just watching yourself freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically watching your brain freak out, but not attaching to all of the things that your brain is thinking. You just kind of take a step back and you're like, that's of course what's going to happen when I sit down to do focused, uninterrupted work. That's par for the course, but I'm in.
That makes total sense. Yep. I love it. Observing the limiting beliefs, but like not letting them own you in that way.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So so finishing out those obstacles, I think with the news, it's a particularly interesting one right now. So you might say, my obstacle is that I'm going to be tempted to check the news. Well, what is your strategy? You could say, as soon as I'm done with my 60-minute block, I get 10 minutes to read up on coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
One of the things that's been kind of crazy the past 2 days is how much everyone's on social media, because we're all just like on it now. We're just like constantly logged on. Yeah. So that's been a little distracting because it's like, I'm normally I'm a social media person and I'm not on it like during the day, usually when I'm working and stuff. So it is really strange to be logged in and like kind of observing what everyone else is doing while I'm trying to get stuff done. So that makes, I think that's a good kind of like, barrier to put like for myself to like stop myself, like, okay, you're going to work. And while you're working, no social media, put your phone, put your Facebook away, everything. And don't worry about what this person said recently happened or whatever. You can check it when you're done. So I'm definitely going to do that.
And watch your brain go, this is so important. It's so important that I know what everyone is doing at all times. I am a bad citizen of the world if I'm not paying attention for the next hour. I'll for sure miss something crucial. And the thing is, this is the interesting thing, and you'll see this in the guide, is I always say, pay attention to all the thoughts that threaten to derail you, but also pay a special attention to the thoughts that seem innocent, that seem almost noble. Like, I'm a good citizen if I'm up to date on the news, right? That sounds great. And yet it's going to completely derail you from the thing that you actually have control over in this moment, which is doing your deep work walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah. And then the last piece here. So once you've anticipated the obstacles and strategies, often you have a few action steps you have to take. So I give you 4 minutes to go grab everything that you need. So I keep mentioning coffee. That's mine. Snacks. You might want to set up an autoresponder on your email or on your chat, like on Slack. If you are working in a place where you might get interrupted, you could put up a do not disturb sign on your door. Anything, pen and paper. I always say get an extra pen because sometimes you're going to run out of ink and then you're going to be like, oh, I don't know how I ended up at the fridge. This is crazy. So grab supplies and set up camp is minutes 10 through 14. And then the last one is you just read the potential pitfalls that are in the document, which is basically some of the stuff that we've covered, which is your brain will freak out. That is part of the process. Let it. And then you take 3 deep breaths and then you start deep work.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think like everybody, let's all just collectively decide to do this. You know, when you're listening to this podcast, decide tomorrow, get it ready for the next day after you listen to this episode, that you're going to have an hour of deep work on something and get yourself prepared to know that tomorrow it's going to happen because it's going to make a big difference. And I think just like anything with habits and routines, like if this becomes a habit, then it's going to make the next few months a lot less stressful and more just doable, because like right now it feels a little bit like no man's land, and we're all just kind of figuring out how to schedule our days. Like 9 to 5 doesn't exist anymore. So like how are we going to do that? So this is really great. And I know that I'm super inspired to try this and get this going tomorrow, because my thing is like, I also tend to have a lot of big ideas, like big ideas that I want to do. And they live all over the place. Like I have a dry erase board, some of them, I have a notebook, some of them I have a Google Doc, some like they're all over the place, but I just tend to like collect these ideas. So it's really good to like, prioritize which idea I want to work on and then put that into my schedule in like the 60-minute chunks. Like why would I not do that over the next few months? Like there's going to be an hour every week for me to work on something big, So I think that's so great.
This is great. So this is what I always say to my clients. When you ask yourself a really powerful rhetorical question, answer it. So you just said, why would I not do it over the next 3 months? And this is a really interesting opportunity. And for anyone listening, do the same thing. Answer that question. What are the reasons why you might not do this over the next 3 months? Putting you right on the spot.
Yeah, I know. Why would I not? Because I don't know. Like, I guess maybe if I didn't have a plan, if I didn't actually hash out the idea into something more, planned out and like realistic, or not realistic, but like, outlined or whatever, figured out. If I didn't make time for it, it's not going to happen. If I didn't, tell myself why it would be valuable, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
All those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to make the time and tell myself and give myself the reasons why it would be a valuable thing, and, not just let it live like up in the clouds and, all of that. So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to put you right on the spot, but I think that's
fantastic.
It's so valuable is when you have that little piece of you that's like, well, then just convince yourself. I always say this at the end of my webinars. I say, what was your number one takeaway from today? And I always point out, yes, that helps me refine my content and make better stuff out in the world, but it also helps people convince themselves that deep work is important. And I say, I am fully on board that deep work is important, and I can send you emails all day, every day. But ultimately, like you said, you're the one that has to schedule the 60 minutes and sit down and come face to face with yourself, which is not honestly always fun, right? I always say prepare for it to be horrible and expect that maybe it's going to be amazing, and be willing to hold both of those paradoxes and jump in head first. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your process with us, and also like helping me talk through some of it too is really, really helpful. So good. I super appreciate that. So I guess like, what are some of your what would be the takeaway that you would hope people would have after listening to this, especially during the current like situation, social distancing and all of this that we're dealing with right now? Like, what do you hope that everyone takes away from this conversation?
I think that this is relevant during a time of coronavirus, but I think this is also a lifelong message, which is that you can do deep, focused work that is going to blow your mind. Like the level at which you produce is going to stun you if you commit to this. I am stunned. I know this sounds so self-righteous, but I only say it because I know it's the same experience that all of my clients have too, is you're just stunned every single day at what you are able to create when you really carve out time and then allow yourself to deal with all of the BS that comes up along the way. Like that is an amazing process. And it's not mutually exclusive with paying attention to the news or socializing with your friends on Zoom when you can't see them in person, or doing a virtual happy hour. You can do all of those things. And when you carve out the dedicated time for deep work, make that a priority and absolutely schedule that in. And then when you're not doing work, you're so much more relaxed because you're not thinking about all the little pieces that you didn't get done. Mm-hmm. And you're not thinking about how you didn't actually do that big project that you have on the back burner. And then you can just chill and all the guilt is gone. And then if reading the news about coronavirus sounds really fun to you, then do that. But yeah, I think that's the takeaways. This is not mutually exclusive. I'm not telling you to turn off your internet for the rest of time. It's just being intentional with specific blocks of time.
Yeah. Yep. Love it. Can you tell us like where people can find you online and also how to get that worksheet again?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way to grab the worksheet is piquecoaching.co/deep work state. And so that's PIQUE.co, not .com. And then the other way to get in touch with me, and if you want to take this work even deeper, is to go to piquecoaching.co/mini session. And you can book free 30 minutes with me where we can actually personalize all of this. So it's similar to what you and I did, where I say, okay, well, let's dig in deeper. What are your objections? What are all the thoughts that are cropping up? What are your obstacles? We just personalize it, make it totally custom so that you can actually do deep work in your life. So those are the two ways to find me.
Thank you again for being on and sharing this with us. I really appreciate the conversation.
That was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Did you love today's episode? Then head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. Or share your takeaways by taking a screenshot of your podcast app and tagging me on Instagram stories at Megan Kuhar. And if you're looking to learn more about how to get ready to create killer content, check out my ebook, The Fan Finder Mindset, at megan-kuhar.com/mindset. Be sure to use the coupon code podcast for $4 off. See you next time.